what are the best kids mountain bikes out there? How do you size them? How do you pick the best ones? And how do you avoid the worst mistakes?
Well, Jamie, you should know. You've got 4 kids and you've been feeding them a healthy diet of new bikes for the past 10 years. What have you learned?
Yeah. The first thing, the most important thing is actually you kind of can't go that wrong these days. If you stay away from the supermarket brands, most kids' bikes are pretty good nowadays. They've got so much better. And when we think about mountain bike innovation, we usually think about e-bikes and we think about downhill bikes being at like the cutting edge of technology. Actually, I think kids' bikes are kind of pushing the envelope forward in the last few years.
They've come a long way, right? I mean, case in point, Transition has 3 new bikes out and they look completely sorted.
Yeah, little shredders.
Yeah, they've got a new 20-inch wheel hardtail they call the Bandit, a 24-inch suspension bike called the Ripcord, and another full suspension bike with 27.5-inch wheels called the Scout. Yep. But it's got nothing to do with nuke-proof, right?
Even though it's the same colour, it's a nuke-proof colour.
And they had the Scout hardtail, right?
Yeah,
totally. Yeah.
So Al, I know you've been looking at buying your kids' bike for your, is it 4 nephews?
I've got 4 nephews, nephews and nieces. Yeah, they're not all boys.
Okay, nephews and nieces. And
basically, I'm Uncle Al who works
You're the
bikes.
You're the bike
guy,
right?
Yeah.
So you know. So was the Bandit on top of your list? Or?
No.
Okay.
No, absolutely not. I mean, this is the bike, the Yomo 20-inch is what I bought for my nephew.
Yep.
So the most important thing for him was he wanted an orange bike.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
So I looked at 3 orange options. There was a Boardman Junior, there was a Frog 20-inch, and there was a Yomo 20-inch. And the thing that decided it for me was 2 things, weight and geometry. Now, I know this is going to sound weird for a kid's bike, right? But the Boardman bike looked absolutely fine. It's a cool bike. It's got a good spec. It was the cheapest of the 3 options. But I kept looking at the picture going, what's wrong with that bike? And then I realized, the chainstays are super long.
Trained eye. Yeah, totally.
I was like, and I was on my screen measuring the distance from the BB to the tyre and the tyre to the rear axle and comparing it to other bikes. And I was like, it's way longer. Yeah. So I ruled that out. I thought the Frog bike was too expensive. Okay. And this bike was the lightest bike and it was in between price on both.
Okay, slow down a bit with this. Let's break it down then. So what do you think? You said geometry, you said weight. What is the single most important thing when you're looking for a kid's bike?
Well, I think they're all important, but I think we should start with weight. Okay. I mean, if we look at Isla bikes, it was pretty much the first company to pioneer this idea that using alloy frames, making kind of slightly higher end kids' bike, making the bikes lighter, was really important to the ride quality. Yeah,
they were good. They were revolutionary at that time.
They were. Yeah. I mean, and they used strong, lightweight alloy hardtail frames. Yeah. Right.
And then they went bust a year ago, sadly.
Yeah, it did go because it's become a really competitive space, right? There's lots of brands with really good bikes in that category, and I think it's really important because if you look at relative weight, we ride mountain. So if I was to ride a hardtail mountain bike and scaled up for my size like this one, it would maybe weigh 10, 12 kilograms.
Maybe,
I weigh 85.
Yeah.
Like you can't have a kid that weighs 20 kilos riding a bike that weighs 9 kilos. It's almost half their body weight, right?
Of their weight.
So weight is really important. And I think the other reason why weight is really important is because, and I've seen this happen so many times, is when the kid gets bored riding it, the parent has to carry it.
Yeah, you can't just kick it into the bushes.
So you either have to carry it in your hand, you have to hang it on the pram, you've got this lump that you have to carry around, so the lighter the better.
Yeah, so I would agree with you up to a point, like it is super important, but so I'm in a really lucky position. I've got 2 twins, identical twin boys, so I use them as like a bit of a science experiment to figure out which bikes are better. And when they were on their balance bike, when they were at the stage when they were on balance bikes, Joseph, my youngest twin, he was on a 6 kilo QB120, and Henry was on a 3 kilo Strider bike, which is like half the weight.
You probably do tail whips on that, right?
Inadvertently. I bet you can guess who went up the hills faster, who had an easier time of it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's obvious who went uphill the fastest, the person on the lightest bike, but who crashed the most?
100%. Henry crashed his brains out. We went through quite a few helmets
on the lighter bike.
On the lighter bike. And actually, that's kind of my point, because I would sacrifice some of that weight saving for grippier tires, like super light. Also means like skinny tires, lighter tires. Yeah. And for off-road riding, I would say you want to give away a bit of that weight gain.
Yeah. Just like you would on a normal mountain bike.
Yeah, like on a hardtail.
We change tires, on any bike, right? We change the tires specifically because we're looking to maximize grip, maximize performance. On a kid's bike, it's exactly the same.
Yeah, like more comfort, a bit more cush as well.
Yeah, and you're right. The bigger volume tires, they've got not just got a bigger contact patch for more grip, but you can drop the pressures down really low. So like if you're riding off road, and that's a key thing we should make clear, right? Like I got this bike for Elio because we live in a city, right? We live in London. He's going to be going to skate park. He's going to be razzing around the streets.
And I'm in the countryside. We're off-road, so...
Exactly. Yeah. And so there are different criteria, right? And I think you're 100% correct. Just in exactly the same way that we want the grippiest tires on our mountain bikes, the kids need that too, right?
Yeah, that's legit. Yeah. We did the same. I did the same thing with 2 other bikes. We had an Euler bike from 10 years ago with a 1.5-inch tire. And a more modern...
Like these ones,
and a more modern bike with like a 2.5-inch wide tire. And it was night and day grip levels. Next point then, let's talk about sizing because it's super complicated. There's loads of different wheel sizes and kids obviously different sizes according to their age. Like some are taller, some are leaner, some are heavier, some are lighter. Like how do you figure this out?
I think the biggest mistake parents make with kids' bikes is basically putting them on too big a bike, kind of like so that a bike that they're going to grow into or kind of get ahead on or whatever. And I think the real issue with that is that they're not manageable.
So yeah, Alan, you're 100% right. We would definitely recommend just holding off maybe on a kid's bike a little bit longer and staying on the smaller size. But it's kind of the opposite with adult bikes, isn't it? It's like
absolutely,
it's better to be on the right size.
Exactly, on a slightly bigger bike. Maybe.
Or err on the size of slightly bigger.
And also with the kids' bikes thing, the longer you can keep them on the bike,
more money you save.
The bikes you have to buy, right?
Yeah.
And you know, the thing is, and I told this to Elio's mum, I was like, he's not going to the Tour de France. He's just riding around the streets, right? Having fun. It doesn't need to be an optimum fit. He needs a bike. He needs almost like a BMX feel to the bike. I mean, and that's the ultimate 20-inch bike, right? A BMX, but they're quite heavy. Yeah.
So should we run through the kind of the order that you go through on the kids' bike? So you start traditionally you start with like a 12-inch balance bike. That's where everyone starts. Definitely no stabilizers, obviously, no pedals.
I mean, that's been groundbreaking, right? Yeah. That whole idea of not starting on stabilizers and learning to balance first, and then adding in pedaling.
When you get to age 2 to 3, you can step it up, like grow that wheel to a 14-inch, and then if they've been cruising nicely, like feet up, like balancing on that small bike, then you can add in pedals as well. Or you can move it to another balance bike, just a bigger wheel.
There's a Strider bike, isn't there, that's convertible, right? You can put the pedals on, or you can have it as a balance bike, and you can kind of bolt it on. But they're still quite expensive, those bikes. Yeah,
so when you're age 3 to 4, they move up to the 14-inch wheel bike. We've got a kids ride shotgun dirt hero bike, which is really sick. It's like a 14-inch like balance bike with a Magura disc brake.
It's sick.
I think it's sick. It's got no color on it. This is obviously for the dads, but it's a great bike. Next, they get to 4 to 5, you can move up to the next wheel size, which is 16-inch. And when my boys were that age, we had Vitus 16s, which obviously are gone now, sadly. So now, though, if you're looking, obviously Vitus isn't around anymore. You need to go for Early Rider probably, or Frog. Age 5 to 7, the next step up, you probably want to move to a 20-inch wheel, and there is loads more choice coming in now when you get to that wheel size. 20-inch is where gears come in for the first time, where they can handle those gears. And then
they don't really know what tomorrow or yesterday will do before that. So it's like, how are they going to work out a thumb shifter?
Yeah, they pick a gear, they stop, they change the gear, then they pedal off again.
Pretty cool, though, right?
Yeah, it's great. Then 8 to 10 years, they'll probably fit a 24-inch bike.
Hold on, Jamie. I've still got 24-inch cruiser.
All right, give it to Elio.
I'm like 54.
You never grew up.
Well, you could say that, right? That's what Simona would say.
But no, when you get to that size, 24-inch, there's so much choice, and you get really good full suspension bikes coming in. Like YT has a brilliant bike at this size called the Primus. We've reviewed that.
Yeah, every time I go to the mill and I see that thing just sat there, I'm like, that's so cool.
Yeah, you want to take it for a ride.
Yeah, that's super cool, right?
Yeah, and Transition has that new ripcord, 130 will travel. Scott's got his Future Pro series.
I mean, what sort of price are we talking about, Jamie, for these kind of kids?
Yeah, they're not
full
cheap.
Suspension bikes,
like $2,000.
Okay, that's pretty spendy for a kids bike, right?
Or like my daughter's still on a hardtail, Early Rider Hellion Elite, which is still not cheap. But it's half the price of one of those things. So that's why we went down that route. Next step up, when they get to 10, you can take it up to 26 inch, like adult, old adult size bikes, 27
Can
and a half.
you believe we used to ride those
Yeah,
things?
I know.
That's
Now they're
mental,
kids'
right?
bikes.
It's mental, right?
Shout out to Giant for the faith, because they've got a really cool mullet bike, 27 and a half on the front, 26 on the rear.
Yeah.
My kids have always got on better with the smaller end of the spectrum, like keeping them on the smaller wheel for like another 6 months.
That's exactly what we talked about.
They get more confidence.
Yeah. Because basically, you want them skidding, you want them in control, you want them to be able to chuck the bike around and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just so much better than having a bike that's too big for them.
And the other thing to look out for is what we call the stack height. So like the height at the front of the bike, because if the bars are up here, there's no way they're loading that wheel to get around the corners, and they're going to wash
It's more like riding a scooter, right? So Jamie, some of these bikes we're talking about are actually quite expensive. But you don't actually have to buy a bike, do you?
No, you don't. Because
you can lease it, right?
Yeah, you can lease it. You want to go to the Hope Academy because you can get like a small wheel bike for £6 a month. And even when you get up to the biggest bikes, like 26-inch bikes, they're like £30 a month, which is like your phone contract or something.
Yeah, that's incredible. So how does that scheme work?
Yeah, so you go on the list. They're like back orders are like 8 weeks or something because so many people want to do it. Yeah, but it's not as long as it used to be. You go on, you get the bike, you ride it for as long as you want, and when you're done with it, you put it in a box and send it back. And if you're done with the scheme, that's fine, they send it back. You can end the contract. If you want to step up to the next size, they'll send you the next one as you're sending out the old one. So
how cool is that, right?
It's really cool. And they've got obviously Hope components, which we know are amazing.
Great stuff.
They wrap the frame so they come looking mint. They sort out everything. The only thing you need to pay for if something goes wrong is the labor, because they will fix it for you if it goes wrong.
Okay.
You can take it to your bike shop, you pay the labor, they'll send the parts out.
No way.
Yeah, it's really cool, isn't it? They'll send you.
Amazing.
The only thing they won't do is
punctures.
Tubes, tires,
of course.
brake pads.
Right?
But they'll even do you a deal on those. They'll do cost price on those. So
yeah, I think that's incredible, because then you can always have the right size bike at the right time, and also it goes with the whole Hope ethos, right? Like we've joked in the past about there's some brands brakes after 6 months you chuck them in the bin.
Yeah, not those.
Whereas Hope brakes, you can get parts from Hope brakes from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's just that whole thing. It's such a green company, and they don't greenwash anything.
No.
Right? It's just how it should be.
Yeah, totally.
It's brilliant, right?
Yeah. Okay, so the next thing, you want kid-specific components, right? You can't just have like an adult-sized bar and a grip, can you?
No, basically everything needs to be shrunk down.
Yeah.
Right. So you want brake levers that are smaller actually not smaller. You don't want them shorter. You want them just closer to the grips
and easier to pull.
Yeah. You want really light action brakes. You want small grips. You want small skinny handlebars. And probably the most important thing I think is short cranks.
My last question is kind of a component, but do kids' bikes really need suspension? Do they need forks? Do they need full suspension? Or is it something that like mum and dad actually want and force on their kid?
Obviously mum and dad do want it, right? Because it's cool. But I think it really depends on where they ride, their skill level, and probably their age.
Yeah, their weight.
Because and how strong they are, right? Because suspension adds weight, right, and complexity. So that the kids need to be stronger to kind of muscle the suspension bike around. But we benefit from having suspension riding off road.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't a child benefit from it? Problem with a lot of the suspension is that it's damped for spring rates of our weight. Yeah. So then when they just shrink the fork down, they don't always match the damping to the lower spring pressures that you'd have for a kid. So it's really important to have the suspension specifically tuned for lighter riders.
I think that's true. I think also when you get to the level where the tyre isn't doing enough to keep the wheel on the ground, that's kind of when you know that you don't have to, but that they could benefit.
But when you're riding behind your kid,
you see them bounce off the bushes,
and you're like, "Oh, this is getting too dangerous," right? Because they're going so fast, right?
I'm getting scared. Okay, so there we have it. There is how to pick a kid's bike, how to size it. If you need any more information, go to MBR. We've got loads of reviews and information on what to do. And remember, this is about having fun riding bikes with your kids rather than reliving your racing glory days.
Also, let us know what your favorite kids' bikes are in the comments, because obviously we've not tested them all. Or if there's any that you'd specifically like us to review, just drop it in the comments below.